Rowe, and this is my impression of a drill instructor directing a musical.
Town hut! Get those tap heels in line and let me see those jazz hands! Are you bundling your home and auto insurance through Progressive? Can you hear me through those sequins?
Bundle your home and auto through Progressive and save.
Left, and step ball change.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates. Home insurance provided and serviced by other select insurers.
Blog Talk Radio.
From Jamaican.com, and I'm here this evening with my co-host, Janice Maxwell. And we have a very interesting guest this evening to enter into conversation with. We have attorney David Rowe, a professor of law at the University of Miami. He's an adjunct professor, and he has a keen expertise in Jamaican expedition. He's been called upon as an assistant in many cases, as an expert witness in both federal and state cases. And he's here this evening to lend some insight into the current situation within Jamaica. My co-host, again, is Janice Maxwell, and she's an independent media professional who is the heart and soul of Caribbean TV world and of the Jamaica Diaspora website. Janice, take it away.
Well, thank you, Chris. Hello, Professor Rowe. How are you this evening?
Janice, it's a privilege to be with both you and Chris today. I'm very fine. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Tell us about your Jamaican roots. Where do you hail from in Jamaica? I
was born in Savannah, Lamar, Westmoreland. My father was Ira de Cordova Road, now deceased, QCOJ. He was a former president of the Jamaican Court of Appeal. He was the first black student at Monroe College. And my mother, Audrey Rowe, was a lecturer in socioeconomics at the University of the West Indies. And I grew up in Kingston. I went to the Wolmer's Boys School before going to the University of the West Indies, becoming an attorney in the West Indies, and then becoming an attorney in Florida and federally, etc.
Oh, I see. There's a lot of
teaching sorry, go ahead.
No.
I've been teaching the Caribbean law. I've been teaching the Caribbean law program at the University of Miami for the last 20 years.
I see.
At the University of Miami School of Law, where we teach the development of Caribbean constitutional law and the comparative law between United States common law and Caribbean common law.
I see. Well, as you know, there's a lot of anger and fear going on at this moment in Jamaica. Could you take a moment to give us a historical context of how a Tivoli Gardens gets created?
But Tivoli Gardens was originally back a wall. It was the area in pre-1962 Jamaica, in that part of Kingston, which was behind the harbor wall that essentially protected the businesses from the sea in West Kingston. And individuals who lived on the reclaimed land behind the harbor wall were called individuals who were living in back a wall. It was really what many people called the worst part of town. The houses were made of shacks, cardboard, and zinc. And eventually, firstly, Alexander Bustamante And then Edward Seaga had plans as to how this densely populated but very poor area could be revitalized and could be brought into the commercial mainstream of life. They had no water. They had, at that time, in the colonial era, no water, no light. They lived around filth and garbage. There was a great deal of malnutrition. There was a great deal of just poor conditions of living. And one of the projects of Mr. Seaga in his 40 years of being a member of parliament there was to convert that part of town from being what essentially was a real quagmire, a terrible place, into a well-organized community with high-rise buildings, a community center, a very good comprehensive high school, or two real big comprehensive high schools, a large soccer field, a large cricket pitch, and the community has over the years, in the years since independence, really developed from being just an industrial wasteland behind a wall into a vibrant community. The community has always been supportive of the Jamaica Labour Party. There were very intense elections in there in 1967 between Seaga, and at that time, the PNP Member of Parliament was Dudley Thompson, and there was a very intense battle for the constituency in 1967. Some people say it was the first time that guns were actually used in a political battle in Jamaica. Mm-hmm. But after Seaga won in 1967, there were no other serious efforts to unseat him, and he won the seat by 98, 99%, sometimes over 100% of the vote at every general election. When there was, however, a group of individuals within Tivoli who were involved in narcotics from maybe as early as the late 80s. They were involved in narcotics. That narcotics group were really a threat to Seaga's political dominance of the area. And in fact, when they had a serious trouble there in 2001, Seaga reported a number of these individuals who were at that point, for the first time, being called the shower posse, to the police. And he asked the police to come in and to arrest a number of boys who he thought were unruly and were not listening to him and were not really playing a role insofar as supporting the community in the way that he thought that the community ought to be supported. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the individuals who was on that list was Dudus Coke, at that time a youngster, 18, 19-year-old. Well, the Commissioner of Police did not arrest the individuals. The Labour Party lost the elections, and the community has essentially been, prior to the recent victory of the Jamaican Labour Party 2 years ago, it has been a thriving community.
Is it ignored?
A community that was in opposition. I'm sorry.
I was saying that they were ignored because they are primarily a laborite, and what, they weren't being funded?
Well, I wouldn't say they were ignored. I wouldn't say they were ignored, but I would say that they did not receive the type of support and funding that they would have received had the Jamaican Labour Party been in power. The Jamaican Labour Party was out of power for 4 consecutive 4 consecutive general elections. They lost 4 in a row. And during that period of time, Tivoli Gardens developed into what we call a garrison constituency, a constituency that had to fend for itself, a constituency that had to seek its own sources of income. And unfortunately, one of those sources of income was the narcotics trade. They were linked to a group of organized thugs called the Shower Posse, and this Shower Posse representatives of the Shower Posse went to the United States and began to engage in the whole-scale sale and distribution of cocaine and crack, cocaine in particular, and marijuana also. And frankly, they are still involved in that to this day, despite frequent crackdowns on them by both the Drug Enforcement Agency and the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agencies and the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
In the U.S.?
In the United States, yes.
Okay.
And,
so it's primarily a U.S. Jamaica. That's where they
well, that's
around.
where they started. Well, that's where they started, but they didn't stop there because the Shower Posse extended to the United Kingdom and became the Yardies, or they hooked up with UK gangs and became known as the Yardies. And they also went to Canada, where they were also known as the Shower Posse. And in fact, I was told authoritatively by police officers recently that there is a significant cell of the Shower Posse operating in Alaska. So you have Eskimos, Eskimo criminals that actually coordinate with the Shower Posse. So it really is a far-flung and well-organized organization.
Well, for it to be that organized, it looks as if they're more or less the pawns. I don't think is it possible that somebody else is using them. I mean, give you an example. I live in Chicago, and the drugs may be distributed in the inner city communities in Chicago, but those teenagers or young men, they don't have access to the cocoa plantations or the guns or the boats or whatever means you use to get that drugs here. It's somebody else, and they just happen to be the people that are targeted, but they're not the real power behind this.
Well, I respect that view, but I disagree with some aspects of it. First of all, the Shower Posse and the Jamaican thugs in Tivoli get the cocaine from Colombia.
Oh, okay.
Jamaica does not manufacture cocaine or process cocaine. What Jamaica does, it transships cocaine. Jamaica sends go-fast boats to Colombia. The go-fast boats collect cocaine, and then it is transshipped through Tivoli Gardens in trailers to the United States. And the DEA considers that a significant percentage of the cocaine that enters the United States is sent through the transshipment of cocaine through Tivoli Gardens. So that's where you have the control factor. The Colombians do send the cocaine to Tivoli Gardens, but the Jamaicans and the Shower Posse takes over from that point, ships it, gets it into the United States, and then gets it distributed into the depressed neighborhoods, depressed urban and frequently black and Latino neighborhoods in the United States.
Right.
So they do have some control in the United States, and the distribution network is controlled by the Shower Posse. It is not controlled by Colombians.
So how do we? So what I'm curious about is, how can we appreciate the? What I'm trying to say is, Okay, so do you remember the movie The Harder They Come, where there was a character, Reagan, as the Robin Hood in the community? Is this happening with Dudus? After all, art imitates life.
Well, that's correct. Reagan is similar. And in fact, I was thinking about Reagan last week when the big dragnet was trying to close on Dudus.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been many fabled Jamaican criminals. You know, Reagan was one of them. There was a guy called Sandokan. There was another individual called George Flash. There was another fellow called Bucky Marshall. I mean, there have been so many fabled Jamaican gangsters over the years from the West Kingston area who have sort of eluded the police, but all of them end up being shot to death. Reagan, though, was prior to the days of narcotics. What Reagan did, Reagan was an opponent of the colonial police who killed a lot of police officers and was eventually tracked down to an island off the coast of Kingston where he was shot dead. But there are some similarities to the connection between, and Reagan was a real person. I mean, Reagan was a real criminal. He was from the 50s. And I suppose he was the first rude boy, or the first fabled rude boy that all of these other posse members or international criminals have modeled themselves off.
So how can we appreciate the perspective of the folks in Tivoli? Well,
there are most of the folks in Tivoli, as in every community, most of the folks in Tivoli Gardens are law-abiding citizens who are not involved in narcotics. Many of them, though, receive benefits from Dudus and the narcotics.
From the narcotics that's distributed through the community?
That, yes. In other words, what Dudus does is he makes a lot of money from the cocaine trade, and then he reinvests that money into the community. Now, the fact that the money comes from an illegal source and it constitutes money laundering doesn't really faze these people because they do not have a government poverty program that will get them out of the tremendous issues that they have to face, such as the purchase of food, school fees, school uniforms, medical care. They have those serious family issues to address on a daily basis. And Dudus helps them to resolve those issues because he makes financial payments on behalf of the individuals who are in his constituency who he knows support his enterprise.
I see. The Prime Minister is under much duress, decided to expedite Dudus. What does this mean to the alliance of the government and the Dons going forward?
Well, I think the United States has made it clear to Jamaica that the United States is not going to tolerate a narco state in Jamaica. In other words, it is not going to be feasible for the government of Jamaica to be in partnership with narcotics traders, and that they take a very dim view of the perceived relationship between Prime Minister Golding, the JLP, and the Shower Posse. And it may be that the Prime Minister will eventually have to resign because of the tremendous distaste that the American government has expressed, both publicly and privately, to the Jamaicans about their relationships with these individuals.
The IMF has agreed to give Jamaica a loan. Is there a linkage between this expedition and the loan agreement?
Well, that's, again, a very good question. Nobody knows. Most people did not expect that the original loan, the original IMF loan would have been made while Dudus remained in custody. However, the loan was made, and Jamaica did not pass the first test, draw down the largest amount for the first quarter until after the government had announced that they were going to issue an arrest warrant for Dudus. So some commentators speculate that behind the scenes, the State Department and other officials were putting pressure on the IMF not to make certain types of approvals for Jamaica until Jamaica complied with the U.S.-Jamaica extradition treaty with respect to Dudus.
I see. Do you know
so
that?
But that is the area of speculation. But I do think I'm one of those who believes that there is a connection between the IMF approval and the government of Jamaica's stance on the extradition treaty.
I see. You know that developing countries struggle under the burden of debt and limited resources to control their future. How do we break this vicious cycle? Because as it stands right now, Jamaica is not exporting or producing anything. We're importing.
That's
and
a
if we're not
point.
exporting, how are we going to get revenue to pay for the loan that the IMF is going to give them? I mean, you could juxtapose that to the person I give you a credit card. Well, once I max out the credit card, I owe you the money, and if I don't have any money coming in, how am I going to pay you?
Well, you've made a very good point. 70 cents of every dollar that comes from Jamaican taxpayers goes towards payment of the foreign debt. And that is why the people in Tivoli Gardens are in a debt trap. The government can never provide, despite the fact that these are tax-paying individuals, the government can never provide for them the amenities that they should be providing because of the government's obligation to pay debts which they can't afford. That's the first part of it. The second critical part of it is that, as you observed, Jamaica's economy has become a basket case. We have essentially lost our position in the aluminum market. Jamaica no longer receives significant inflows from the sale of alumina, and half of that could be because the world market is low, but the other half is that Jamaican bauxite, because of the bauxite levy of the late 1970s, has also essentially made its bauxite the most expensive bauxite in the world. So that has also made a number of U.S. purchasers timid when it comes to Jamaican bauxite. Bauxite is a very, very viable and very good industry for the long term for Jamaica, but it does need to be nurtured as an industry, and it needs to be strategically reconfigured so that it doesn't. It's more competitive with the rest of the world's bauxite or alumina exporters. Now, as far as bananas are concerned and sugarcane, because the European Economic Community no longer takes the quotas that our agricultural exports should fill, again, we have situations where we have non-viable sugar plantations and non-viable banana plantations. And these non-viable plantations are not right now.
Will not be able to provide some
operational.
Sort of right.
They're not right now operational, and that has led to a further economic crisis in Jamaica. So we're in a stagflation situation. We have a stagnant economy, high inflation, and social unrest. And the government really needs to do something before to revive this economy. And, of course, all of the international publicity about this unrest has cut tourism by 40%. So Jamaica is going to have a few tough times.
Right. Okay. Another key player in this drama is the Jamaican diaspora. The Jamaican Diaspora Foundation has decided to delay their convention, which would have been held from the 14th to the 17th of June, until they decided to delay this until things cool down. What?